Welcome back, everyone. So you're buying your first house, or maybe it's been a day or two since you've been in the real estate market, and you keep hearing terms and you really don't know what they are. Well, today I'm going to go over a few of those terms and hopefully I can give you a bit of insight. First up, listing agent versus buyer's agent. This is one's pretty self-explanatory. I'm pretty sure you figured it out already, but just in case, the listing agent is looking after the interests of the seller and the buyer's agent is looking after the interests of you, the buyer. So can a listing agent also represent a buyer on the property? Yeah, they can. This is something that we call multiple representation. So this is a bit tricky. When you enter an agreement with the realtor, whether it be with a buyer representation agreement or a listing agreement, what a lot of people don't realize is that you actually have a contract with the brokerage as opposed to the individual agent that you're working with. So there's a few different scenarios that multiple representation can happen in. Number one, the same agent looking after the buyer and the seller. This is more commonly called double ending. Number two is where there's two different agents from the same brokerage are representing the seller and the buyer. Now, this can be different offices as well, but as long as they're owned by the same brokerage, then you're in multiple representation. Now, the third one's a bit different. You could have two different buyers offering on the same property being represented by either the same agent or two different agents from the same brokerage. Now, this is something you should be aware of because in the event that you are in multiple representation, you need to actually authorize the brokerage and be okay with it. So there's a form that you fill out and you initial that's saying, okay, yep, we're good. We're okay with the multiple representation. Next up, pre-qualified versus pre-approval. So pre-qualified is actually more casual, more of an estimated version of a mortgage pre-approval. So for that, you'd give very basic information. So your income, your assets and debts to the lender. They don't do a credit check or anything at that point. And then they'll give you kind of okay, best guess, this is what you're approved for a mortgage. Now, when you do a pre-approval, it's a lot more involved. It's essentially like doing a mortgage application. So for this, you're going to have to give a lot more information to your mortgage broker or your mortgage specialist at your bank. They're going to look for a variety of documents. Now, it'll be including, but maybe not limited to, assets, debt, income, identification. You get proof of employment, which may include a pay stub or also a letter of employment, which would outline how long you've been there and what your salary is. You're also going to need your expenses and financial obligations. So anything like child or spousal support, lines of credit, car loans, credit card balances, and the lender will also conduct a credit check when doing this approval. Because really there's nothing worse than you falling in love with the property, put in your offer because you were pre-qualified, only to find out that you don't actually meet the approval requirements for that mortgage. So when you start looking, make sure you get pre-approved as opposed to pre-qualified. Conditions. What are they? Well, essentially, when you do an offer, you're going to have a list of criteria that you need to meet or the property needs to meet in order for you to be satisfied to buy the house. So whether it be a home inspection, financing, sale of maybe your house if you already have one. If you're a first-time home buyer, that wouldn't apply. If they need to do a septic inspection or a well inspection, and you'll have a certain amount of time to fulfill that or be satisfied with the outcome of the inspections, and then you're going to do a fulfillment. So once you do that, the offer becomes firm and binding, and you're committed to buying that house. If you are unable to fulfill the conditions, maybe the home inspection didn't come out very good and there was so much wrong with it that you're going to walk away from the house, well, then you're going to walk away from the deal and get your deposit back. So that leads us to conditionally sold. So let's say your agent's trying to book a showing. The listing agent says, no, sorry, it's conditionally sold. They're not allowing any other showings. So what's happened is a buyer and seller have come to agreement on terms. And unfortunately, you're just going to have to wait it out and see what happens. Well, you might think, well, can I just not put in an offer that has better terms and bump that person? Unfortunately, no. Once it's conditionally sold, that's up to that buyer, first right of refusal. They've got to get through that portion. You can do a backup offer in many cases where maybe if that one falls through, then your offer is then in place first. Now, there may be a case where maybe the buyer has a house to sell. So there's a conditional on sale of buyer's property. In that case, they may have an escape clause, which allows the seller to accept another offer, and then they would give the first buyer first right of refusal to remove all conditions and firm up or walk away from the deal. Deposit and down payment. So your deposit is going to be what you put down when you have an offer in place. Now that money is held in trust, obviously until the deal closes, then it's applied as part of your down payment. So what happens to your deposit if the deal dies? Well, if you've got an offer that is conditional and you're unable to fulfill the conditions, be it the home inspection uncovers some serious defects, or maybe the house doesn't appraise out so you can't get your financing, then your deposit will be returned to you in full without deduction. Now, if you have a firm deal, meaning there's no conditional period, and you can't close, unfortunately, you lose your deposit. It's forfeited to the seller. Now, a down payment is the amount of money that you're going to put towards the purchase of the home. Your lender will deduct the down payment from the purchase price, and your mortgage covers the rest. Now, the minimum down payment required is based on the purchase price. So for purchase prices of $500,000 or less, I know it's pretty hard to find, but not impossible right now. The minimum is 5% of the purchase price. So for purchases between $500,000 to $999,999, then it's 5% on the first $500,000 and 10% for the portion above $500,000. And for purchase prices $1 million and above, you'll need 20% down. So now we get to closing costs. So closing costs can vary from 1.5 to 4% of the purchase price. Now, this is going to include things like your land transfer tax, your title search, transfer of deed, mortgage registration, as well as your legal fees. And these all need to be paid to your lawyer on closing. So if you want to get an estimate for closing costs, there are plenty of online calculators that you can just go on, put in the purchase price, and then it'll give you an idea of what you're going to look at for closing costs. So make sure you budget for these costs when you're making an offer. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. That wraps up this week's video. I hope you found the information useful. If you did, please like and subscribe. And as always, have a great week.